Okay, so this is part 3, I think part 2 of our tutorial series on how to make vegetation in Blender. And this is where we left off with this leaf, created the materials and everything. So let's continue from here so that we can create this plant here, this tall plant here, and see how that goes. Let me just get my trailer here so that we can look at the different trees or different plants we're going to be creating. Okay, so we're going to be creating this and this and this. It's just as simple as setting up one, and then you can create other shapes quite easily. So let's go into that and see how to. So since we have that, I'm just going to duplicate this again. Let me also make sure that I'm naming these so that they're easy to find. So I'm just going to call this leaf 1. I'm just going to call it leaf, and then this as leaf 2. And maybe have this in a backup collection, backup, so that if I want to make another instance of this, I can just get it from here. So let me switch off the backup and stick to this. So we want to create this, which means we want to create to have a particle system, a hair particle system, with our leaf as the hair instances. So what we're going to do is create the shape we want. So let's start with a simple shape like a cube. Just maybe make it this shape. Apply scale. What we can do is give it a hair system. So we can go to the particle system, give it a new hair system, and just call this leaves. Trimmed. Let me just call it leaves trimmed. Hope that's the sparing. Not sure if that's the sparing, but yeah, let's go with that. And then you can give it a hair system. You can see how everything looks, but we want to render these instead of these hairs. So then we can go to the render and change the path, render as from path to object, and then we can select our object like so. Now, getting the right orientation of these leaves is a bit tricky. So let me just show you how to do it correctly. So one thing I want to do is first apply these modifiers. Not sure if that is going to be necessary for this, but let me first scale this down so that we have a nice scale for these instances. You can scale it direct. You can scale these instances by directly scaling the instance object, or by going to the particle system and scaling either the hair length, or turn on advanced, check advanced here, so that we can access more settings here. And under velocity, you can play around with these settings. Now, the most important setting here, I think, is the rotation. Getting the right rotation here, because we want these to face out from the mesh. So to get the right rotation, you can turn on rotation here and start playing with this orientation. The orientation you want to first play around with is the normal. And now, after you do that, you'll see that they're still not looking exactly where you want them to look, or directly outside. So what we want to do is first apply these simple deform most of these modifiers, especially the simple deform modifier, because it depends on the rotation of the mesh. You can see when I rotate this, the shape also changes. So we want to apply that so that when we go to edit mode, we're not changing we're not affecting that bin modifier. So after we're doing that, now we just have to make sure that our cursor is set to the pivot point there. So Shift S, cursor is selected, then go to edit mode, and then you can hit your period key to access this pie menu, to change your pivot point from whatever pivot point it is to 3D cursor. Now this will allow us to rotate the object or the mesh directly onto the 3D cursor. Now the reason why I'm rotating this in edit mode is because if I rotate this in object mode, it won't have an effect on the instances here. So that's why you have to do this in edit mode. And now you just need to look for the right orientation. If we rotate this on the x-axis by -90 degrees, we get all these pointing out of the mesh, and this is what we want. Then what we can do now, go to the particle system, just select the mesh, go to the particle system, and under rotation, you see a random rotation. This will help us randomize the rotation of our mesh, of our instances. I can turn on phase as well, random phase. Now we get something like that. Now, if you increase the particle count here, you can see how this starts to look like a trimmed. I don't know how this kind of plant is called, but if you look under here, you can see that we have a lot of particles here that are being rendered at the bottom, yet we are not going to be seeing that bottom. So I'm just going to select that face, click that so that we don't render anything there, so that most of those particles are rendered above or in areas where we're going to be seeing, that are going to be viewable to the camera. But if you look at our final thing here, it doesn't look that realistic compared to what we have here. And the reason for that is that if you look at these, different leaves have different, the plant has some variation of leaf colors. So to do that, what we're going to do, we're going to select our instance, go back to the materials, and if you hit Shift A, input, you should find the object info input. Now what we want to do is randomize the color a bit here using this random input from the object info node. So if we use Ctrl Shift and then click on this object info node a few times, you can snap between previewing these output nodes as long as you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. Make sure you have that enabled to access those shortcuts. So if you go to this, you can see it's already giving us a random grayscale colorization. It's not really colorization, but it's just giving us random grayscale values for each of the individual leaves we have on this plant. So we can use this, we can colorize this using the color ramp. Now if you change this to constant, you can start changing the colors to whatever you want. I would recommend you have a reference image that you're working from, so that you can sample some of the colors you have here. So let me just find something simple here to work with, that we can sample the colors from, because just getting them right from your head is not going to produce good results for you. So let's just do this. Doesn't necessarily have to be the exact plant you're working with, we're just sampling the colors. So it's going to pick something like that, maybe something like that. The more colors you add, the more variation you have, which could be good. And yes, so let's see, pick some dark colors. That's a bit too dark, so let's see something like that. Now we have lost the texture because we're just previewing this color ramp. So what I can do is add a color, mix RGB, then connect the texture above in color 1, and then this color ramp can be color 2. Now you can see a mixture of both. I think this doesn't look too bad, but you have these blending modes you can play around with. So overlay usually gives the best results, and you can play with the color ramp here to see how much you want that to come through. If we still have the texture there, so I can just drag this into the color ramp and the base color. You can see what we have. So we still have a few settings here. You can play with, you can try randomizing this. Now you can see each of these instances has the same scale. So if you go under the render settings, you have this random scale randomness that you can play around to get different results or different scales for the different instances. Another thing I don't want to see here is this emitter. So you can go under the object data, and then under instancing, you can turn off display in instancer, display instancer, and render instancer, so that you don't see that instancer. You just see the final results. This is what we have. Now if you add some lights, then things can start looking more natural or better. Let me just turn on lights here. You start to see how this looks. You can see, let me just try 20. Now the good thing about this is that now that we have that shape, let me just duplicate this. You can go to edit mode and just change the shape to whatever I want. You can see if we add a Suzanne head, just give him the same material. Sorry, give him the same particle system. So if you go to particle system, click new and change this to leaf trimmed, and you can see we get the exact thing. I have some of my effects here turned off. For example, ambient occlusion is off, just so I get, so that I can easily record this without it being too laggy. So that's why I'm turning off some of these effects. But if you add them, then your results will look even much better. You can also test this out with a background image like an HDRI image, just to see how the lighting will look or how it would look in an environment. Then you can start adjusting the materials just a bit. So let's select this and go back. Can even try multiply for the blending mode to make the leaves a bit darker. Can use the slider to control how dark you want them to be. Again, can scale this down, reduce the size of the leaf, but the smaller the size of the leaf, let me just delete this so that we are dealing with only a few of these, so that my computer doesn't slow down too much. Let me just also squeeze this a bit. You can see the smaller the leaves are, the more particles you might need, so that you don't see the gaps too much. So let me just crank this way up so that we see. Okay, you can see it's now really laggy. I guess you can see the results. Yeah, so this is what we have. Let me just put this to something like 10,000. Again, save this project. Call this. Yeah, let me just leave that as vegetation. Just create another folder for. Let's call this one. Yeah. So in the next tutorial, we can look at how to make these 4 plants here. Thank you.